前裏切んのか？
いや。
やろな！ちった疑え！
Hello everyone and welcome to the OP13 Canon update. So in this video I'll be going over the cards I think from OP13 that could be usable in some of my Canon decks. Just a refresher for those who are newer to the channel, my Canon decks are the decks that I try to play a little bit of every set and try to keep them updated. Trying to add a deck every couple sets or so of just cards going into my my standard rotation. So those decks that I have currently in my Canon are Robin, Green Yellow Law, Blue Yellow Nami, and Blue Purple Sanji. So I guess without too much more, let's just gonna hop into it. So starting out, we'll start with Robin and the cards that I think that could make the cut in the deck. First one we have here is the Silver's Rayleigh. I found that one of the things that is really good for Robin is you want your characters to kind of keep their board clear and use your leader as much as possible for getting rid of their life or swinging at their life. And this Rayleigh kind of fits as a slightly larger version of the Sanji from OP09, being a kind of larger rush body that also rests an opponent's body, which can be pretty good. So the way this one reads is 8 cost, 9,000 power, rush, so it always has rush, and then on play, if you have any Dawn cards given, rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less, then add up to 1 Dawn card from your Dawn deck and set it as active at the end of the turn. So the ideal place you would play this one would be on 9 Dawn. You would attach 1 to leader, play out Rayleigh, rest something of theirs that they have on board, something 5 or less. Use Rayleigh to swing at it. Hopefully get it off the field. If you don't, you still have they've used up a card, and then your 6k Robin can go at life to try to banish a life. And then at the end of the turn, you gain 1 ramp as active, which is perfect for Gum Gum Giant. So that's kind of the ideal use case for that, is on 9 Dawn, playing it out. If you need to play it out earlier, it is still a good rushing body. That is still a viable option. And this just exerts pretty good board pressure. So that's why I have this one in there for Robin. Next up, we have from Yellow, we have the 4-drop Kozuki Hiyori. She's a 0 power, 1k counter character with blocker, which is always important, and her being a 4 cost means she lines up well with some of our other 6 drops, which I think are pretty strong in the deck in general, as those 6 drop characters. And then she has on KO, you may trash 1 card from your hand. If your leader is multicolored, which Robin is, add up to 1 card from the top of your deck to the top of your life. So the way I see this one working out is late game, you just play it down as a blocker. If your opponent rests it or tries to go around it, that's going to be one of the things that they have as an option. But a lot of times they're going to have to go through it, either through swinging, and then you use this as a blocker. You want to snap this blocker off as soon as possible. There's no waiting around for this one. And then you will get to gain a life. So it represents kind of 2 swings that you can kind of negate with this 1 card, as long as they aren't having cards to rest it. The biggest downside to this one and to the previous one is they both don't have trigger, and the Robin deck, in order to ramp pretty consistently, you do want to make sure you have a high trigger count. So this one not having trigger is a little unfortunate, but I think is still pretty reasonable. But yeah, I think otherwise just a pretty good card. Next up, we have the Lilith. This is a trigger searcher. It looks at top 4 for a trigger, and just otherwise just a searcher. This is similar, and let me clear this out, to Clover, who is only top 3 and is leader locked to Robin. So, but it's also a 2K. So if you really find an opportunity to play one of these trigger searchers, or one of these searchers for triggers, you're going to have a really compelling reason not to use Professor Clover over this. But I do think that there is some argument to be made to dig a little deeper. Um, and otherwise, they're cards that are very, very similar. I would probably expect that in the event that you want to swap these two, or run them in general, you would need a top end that has a trigger, which is one of the things that's kind of difficult for Robin, because all of your searchers fail to find your top end, which means that oftentimes you can end up in a game where you don't have anything that is good at finishing the game because your searchers whiffed on them and you just had to get extra 2Ks and stuff. That said, we do now have a trigger top end card. Unfortunately, it's leader lock to egghead, and that's where the majority of its upside is. So we technically can search for a 9-drop that has a trigger and is a decent attacking body. The problem being that you don't get most of the effect on it. So I think it's probably not quite the right time for Lilith, but one to be paying attention to in the future with Robin. So those are the cards I kind of identified for Robin that I thought would be pretty nice. The next deck we have is the Green Yellow Law, and just starting off with a banger. This 6-drop Law, while he does not come in off of the leader ability, I feel like this is a really effective way of reusing some of your characters. You could do stuff like swinging with the what's his name, Cavendish, getting the Resanded Dawn, and then playing this guy out to get the on play from Cavendish again, which you're just getting a lot of value out of your Cavendish in that regard. And when you're at 1 or less life, which is pretty common in Green Yellow Law, you will end up pretty low pretty early because you want to use your leader effect. This gains blocker, which can be this is on par with the other blockers in the deck. So I find this to be a pretty effective piece. The other thing you can use this with is you can play out stuff like your veggies or other top life setters, and then play out a bigger body from hand with this Law, and then use leader ability as well. So you've got like a lot of ways to kind of magnify your board pretty aggressively, and this one kind of helps fit in with that style. The next one I kind of have highlighted here. Actually, let me go ahead and read the text for those who are probably just listening. This is a 6-cost, 6,000 power character with no counter, and if you have 1 or less life cards, this character gains blocker. And on play, you may return one of your characters to the owner's hand. Play up to 1 character card with a cost of 5 or less from your hand rested. So it kind of does the Law thing where you get to swap out characters. They do come unrested, which is a little worse than you would see on other cards. And it is only a conditional blocker. That said, you do get to play out a 5-cost or less from your hand, which is higher than most of the other Laws work. All in all, I don't think you can probably run a playset of this one. It's probably in some smaller number, just because the 6-cost not working with your leader ability as well does have downside. So it's definitely a piece that's great at kind of chaining a low, like if you have exactly 1 card that you really want to use a couple times, this does work quite well with it. But it is not the kind of card that you can use every turn just because you need setup to go with it. But yeah, now moving on to the next one, we have another Supernova. This one is a 4-cost, 5,000 power / character with 1K counter. It's the Rono Zoro from the set. It has on play, if your leader has the film or Straw Hat Crew type, set up to 2 of your Dawn cards as active. Doesn't work in Green Yellow Law, which is notable. That said, the other piece of the ability, which I think is quite strong, is end of your turn, set this character as active. One of the things that can really bog down a Green Yellow Law deck is if your opponent can just clear your board and keep you from establishing your board. That can be quite problematic. So this card being able to apply pressure while still being protected at the end of the turn is pretty relevant for the game. It's something that you'll definitely see in the Zoro deck. So it's definitely a strong card. Less strong in green-yellow, but I do think that it is potentially a viable option as a 1 or 2 of, just as a way of having a sticky attacker that's kind of hard for your opponent to attack into. Last green card that I'm going to go over for Green Yellow Law is another 6-drop, so it doesn't quite work with the leader ability as well as we'd like. But I do think it's got a strong effect and worth investigating. It's the 6 cost, 7,000 power, 0 counter Monkey D. Luffy. This is one of the secrets for the set. It has double attack, which is really great at exerting pressure. And then it has on play, if your leader is multicolored, set up to 4 of your Dawn cards as active. Then you cannot play character cards with a base cost of 5 or more during this turn. Now, I think the way this one works, you can use your leader ability with this one. But let me compare this to, what is it, Shanks from this set. This one, it might not work. The wording is different than the way the Shanks works. So this one is, I guess, conditional on my interpretation. I do think, though, that you can play off of leader ability because it's coming from your life, and you're not like playing the card the same way. But this is definitely one of the ones that I will have to check out the FAQ when I get a chance. If it does work, I do think that this is a pretty effective way of setting up. You get to use leader ability pretty easily on this turn, and have a double attack body for the following turn, which seems pretty strong to me. Next up, and this one's pretty simple. We have the one who is the most free is the Pirate King event. It is a 1-cost event, and it's just a basic top 5 searcher for supernovas, and in yellow, with a trigger of activate this card's main effect. I don't know if this card is something that you particularly want in Green Yellow Law, because you usually want the searchers to have bodies that you can use for leader ability, both for filling board and for picking up. But I think just as an option, if you are wondering what to do with your maybe 49, 48, 50th card or something like that, it would be a possible option to kind of help increase your consistency in finding the cards you want, if you already have filled up on all of your other searchers. This is an option. I would say that it is worse than all of the other searcher options that are in the deck already. Finally, we have the 5-cost 6,000 power 1k counter Jewelry Bonnie in yellow. And she has, if this character would be removed from the field by your opponent's effect, you may turn 1 card from the top of your life cards face up instead. So this one, I think, is probably on the lower end of your playables off of your leader ability. That said, it being a sticky body does prevent your opponents from really abusing those early turns where you kind of get fragile. And if you fail to stick some bodies early, you can kind of really fall behind. And then the turning your top card of your life face up is actually quite manageable in this deck, because you can use that information so that you know when you can skip playing your veggies out to set the top card of your life. And then if you end up having to just put it in life off of something, this is a pretty decent trigger that can be used for filtering your hand. So that trigger of draw 2 cards and trash 1 from your hand. If you end up with too many bricks in your hand, you can just set this as top life, and you just let your opponent swing into it to get the trigger. So those are the cards I kind of had highlighted for Green Yellow Law. Moving on to the next deck, we have Blue Yellow Nami, and this one got quite a few good cards, and they all happen to be from the same archetype, which is pretty awesome. We have, starting off, we have the Otama with the 1-cost 0 power 2k counter with on play. If you have 3 or less life cards, draw 2 cards and trash 1 from your hand. Nami very often wants to be at that 3 life really early, so this is a card that is just replaces itself, lets you sort through your bricks, which can be a little bit high in number in this deck. Because your leader ability lets you use bricks as 2Ks, it's not usually too big of a problem, but there is a number that is too high eventually. If your hand is all bricks, that can be really dangerous. So being able to use one of your 2Ks to kind of get a real refresh of your hand is probably worth it. The other thing that works nicely with this Otama is your Odin, who is your primary finisher, wants cards on the field that he can bounce so that he can use his double swing. And this is the kind of card that is perfect for that purpose. You can play it out for 1, bounce it with Odin for 3, meaning you've got 6 more Dawn to work with, which is a lot of pressure you can apply with Odin then. The next card we have is the 5-cost, 6,000 power, 1K counter Yamato in blue. And she has, on play, if you have 3 or less life cards, draw 2 cards, and then give a rested Dawn to one of your leaders. Everything about this card is perfect for Nami. You need a Dawn on leader for your leader ability. You're frequently at 3 or less life. Drawing 2 is great. You will have... There's no reason not to run a playset of these unless you can't find them. So just a great all-around card for Nami. It hits all the boxes. You can use the cards that you've drawn to defend life and be really good. Next up, we have one that we already went over with Robin. I think this Hiyori is quite strong in Nami as well, just as a card to play down and give yourself that multiple blocks. It also happens to be Land of Wano, so it's going to be a good setup for the other cards in your deck. And yeah, just a solid card. All the same things that were true about it in Robin are true about it here in Nami as well. Finally, we have this one's a little more speculative. We have another Land of Wano card. This is Momonosuke, and he has on play, look at the your life cards and then place them back in your life area in any order. So one thing that this does do is you take all of your life cards out of your life, which should trigger your Nami ability, and then lets you reset the order of them, which will give you the ability to set up some of those good triggers, like those Hikinojo triggers, and have them come out on the correct timing. Unfortunately, just being a 3-cost 0 power and only 1K counter, it's much less powerful than other cards. But you can make a lot more use out of these cards because of the Odin's need for cards on field. You can definitely make a use out of these weak bodies without too much issue in Nami. So those are the cards I highlighted for Nami. Next up, we have Blue Purple Sanji. So because he also likes... Oh, let's try to not have this shift around a bit. Because he is currently running Kaya, which is a very similar card to Otama, which is just the on-play draw 2, trash 2. This Otama is just almost a strict upgrade for Sanji. Taking that first life is usually not an issue in Sanji, and then being able to have this card to help unbrick you, get cards in trash for your Sanji finishers and your Reijus. There's just a lot to like about your 2Ks having this much value in them. So another great one for Sanji. The next card we have, unfortunately, because of the way Sanji's leader ability is worded, it is less effective to run non-Straw Hat cards. But I do think that there are a couple cards worth investigating from this set for Sanji. The first of which being the 1-drop Ace event. If I bow down to power, what's the point of living? It is a 1-cost event. It's one of the modal ones. So on main, you may rest 1 Dawn card, making it 2 Dawn total. If you have 1 or less life cards, not that hard to enable. A little precarious for Sanji, but not too bad to enable. Your opponents cannot activate blocker when your leader attacks this turn. So this is just an unblockable that works with Sanji. And worst case, it is the 1-cost counter event that gives your leader plus 3K. So some number of these I feel like is probably correct, just as a way to finish the game through blockers in the late game, because blockers are really effective out of Emu and Ace in this meta. So being able to bypass them is quite an effective ability. You would have 8 on left, which lets you swing for 13 with your leader if you need to. And for a card that is at its worst a counter event, that's pretty great. The other card that I kind of highlighted as a possibility for Sanji, and this one is even more speculative. It is one of the modal events, so you do have the upside of just being able to use it as a 3k counter if you need to. But it is the go all the way to the top, which is one of these Rayleigh events, or I guess it's a Roger event, and it happens to depict Rayleigh. But it is a 1-cost event. With main, you may rest 3 of your Dawn cards, making that 4 total. If you have any Dawn cards given, so in some sense it costs 5 to do this, but KO up to one of your opponent's characters with 4,000 base power or less, and up to one of your opponent's characters with 3,000 base power or less. So the way I would look at this card is as a tech piece for dealing with very aggressive decks. Like if you find yourself facing Red Rayleigh or Zoro or a number of other really aggressive go wide little guy decks, this would be the kind of card you could tech in your Sanji deck to help alleviate some of that meta, because those decks generating a whole bunch of 5s makes it hard for Gum Gum Giant to kind of come through in the end for Sanji. So having a good way to kind of recapture a board seems quite strong for this. But again, it's not a Straw Hat card, so it is one that you have to use as one of your tech pieces and not as a 4 of, unless you're really needing it. And it does reduce the consistency of your leader ability if you run too many of them. So those are the 4 decks that I have highlighted as my canon. The next set of cards I want to go over real quick are cards that I'm just watching that are good in potentially other decks, or decks that I could end up playing in the future. First of which, we have the Asabo and Luffy 1-drop 1,000 power 2k counter with activate main. You may give up to one of your active Dawn cards to one of your leaders or characters and trash this character, and then give up to one of your opponent's characters minus 3,000 power during this turn. So in the same vein as Raise Max and Building Snake and Gordon before them, this is a pretty solid effect, but it also has the upside of giving an active Dawn to your leader, kind of synergizing with all of the characters who need, or all of the leaders who need Dawn attached, and being a 2k. So it's just got a lot of flexible things to like about it. Cards like Marco, I could see using this, or even maybe a Sanji, or something like that, the red Sanji that gives rush. Just a lot of things that you can really work with out of this ability. Yeah, I think there's just a lot to like in these flexible 2Ks. The next one I have highlighted is the 1-drop 2,000 power 1k counter Monkey D. Garp. This is a searcher that only works for Sabo, Ace, and Luffy, and it looks at the top 4 cards for a card with a cost of 3 or more and add it to your hand, then place the rest of the bottom deck in any order. So this is one that's going to be on people's radar anytime we have Ace, Sabo, or Luffy in red, which I don't think is going to be uncommon when you have 3 different leaders who are all popular. One of them is going to end up in red eventually, and it's already quite strong in all of the existing OP13 decks, but definitely one I'm watching for the future, as well as every time we see a new Ace, Sabo, or Luffy deck, there's going to be a question of whether or not you can play this. Next up, we have a green event. It is the I Know You're Strong, so I'll go all out from the very start. It is a 1-cost event with main. You may rest 2 of your Dawn cards So effectively 3. And then up to 2 of your opponent's rested characters, while the cost of 7 or less, will not become active in your opponent's next refresh phase. So the way I kind of look at this one is it is a much cheaper but much more situational version of what's the card called? Gravity Blade. As a way of just kind of stalling out your opponent to kind of deal with stuff later. You can use this for setting up big plays like maybe a 9-cost Whitebeard, where you can make those 7-cost or less characters just kind of hard to use, and set them off for multiple turns in a row. First by letting them not unrest, and then second by having a big enough base power or something like that to get around it. And then the other half of it is the counter event, which are always really reasonable cards for decks like this. So just one that I'm keeping aware of. It also has really good types for searchability, which is good to see. Especially I could see this one being decent in the green Bonnie deck, because it's easy to get your opponent to have multiple rested 7 costs, and then being able to, for only 3 Dawn, freeze those down and still have up your leader ability potentially to freeze out even more characters. That's just a lot of power in a card that is searchable in that deck. Next up, we have Brilliant Punk, which is a 4-cost event with main. You may return one of your characters to the owner's hand and return up to 1 character with a cost of 6 or less to its owner's hand. So this is essentially the same text as Jozu has, and it's a Jozu depicted card. He's beating up Croc here. But the thing that I was thinking with this one is, if there is ever a deck that really can take advantage of play out a 1-drop, bounce it. Play out a 1-drop, bounce it. Play out a 1-drop, bounce it. And really keep the tempo up against opponents. I think that this might be a part of it. It also has a trigger of draw 1 card, which is a pretty solid place to be. The first place, ironically enough, that I wanted to test with it is Blue-Purple Crocodile. And having a card where Crocodile's getting getting punched versus in the Crocodile deck sounds like a fun mismatch, but that's where I'm going to try it first, around playing a searcher, bouncing a searcher, and really trying to take advantage of that tempo and using Croc as my main win condition early, because there's so many ways of finishing with him late in the game. The next one also is one that I'm watching for Blue Purple Croc, but this is just a general unleader locked card. And this is the Divine Departure. This is the Roger version of Divine Departure. It has main, you may rest 5 of your Dawn cards, and this is a 0-cost event, so this is only 5 Dawn. If you have any Dawn cards given, give up to one of your opponent's cards minus 8,000 power during this turn. So this is a pretty effective way of shrinking big bodies that are otherwise hard to deal with, and then you just get to swing into them. And then it also has the counter, you may trash 1 card from your hand, one of your leader or characters gains 3,000 power during this turn. So at its worst, it is a 0-cost event, which there are a couple decks that really like to have. I'm thinking stuff like Sugar or Blue-Purple Crocodile, who really benefit pretty heavily from those 0-cost events by being able to use events on no Dawn, which is pretty important for those decks because they have difficulties managing their Dawn. But that was kind of it for the cards that I'm looking at for OP13, and how they might affect my Canon decks. I will cut here and go over to a couple of lists, just something that I'm playing on day 1. Do not expect these to be particularly refined, but just things that I'm going to try out when OP13 comes out with these different leaders. But I will go ahead and hop over to those, and I will see you guys shortly. All right, now to go over some day one lists for OP13. We're going to start out here with Robin. So main new cards to pay attention to here, we have the Rayleigh. That's the main card here. And then the idea with the deck is you want to burn life with Kid and Robin, and you want to rest characters and swing into them with Sanji and Rayleigh. And then everything else you have is just kind of like try to get some good triggers. So we have a couple different removal triggers. We have a free blocker. We have late game free bodies. And then we have Giant and Nami here as a card. You can search up your Sanjis, Robins. You can search up quite a bit with this list. Not as much as you might expect in some other lists. One thing that it cannot search up is this Nami, but it can search up this one. So important to pay attention there. And of course, it also searches up Giant, which is real big. And yeah, this one plays similar to the one that I've played most recently, where you just kind of do rest and swing into board. Rayleigh just being a good option on 9 Dawn to work with that, getting both the rest and the swing. But yeah, this is where I'm going to start for OP13 with Robin. Moving on to the next list, we have Green, Yellow, Law. So this one looks very similar to the previous list that we've run in the past. The things that I'm testing out, a couple of these laws. And then because of the need to get around blockers, I have upped the number kind of resting 2Ks here as cards to try to rest one of the blockers out of Emu maybe, or out of Ace to kind of get around them. I do think that Kid is quite strong into those leaders, but it is definitely not unassailable. So make sure that you are ready to end the game quickly. Once you have the board, drop down your Kid and then try as best you can to win on the following turn. Unfortunately, the Emu does get to remove your 5s pretty readily, so it's going to be a tough sell there. Hopefully you'll be able to have a Law or Veggie on board, as this is an unkillable or an unKOable blocker, and then this one is one that just lets you gain some life and set up for the following turn anyways. But yeah, main thing to pay attention here is this Law. Moving on to the next list, we have Nami. For Nami here, the biggest add is the Otama here, but we also are getting the Yamato. I'm not quite sure on these events. Again, these are kind of day 1, day 0 lists. But you're pretty heavy on the Wano searchables, including this Marco, which is Wano searchable. In the couple of games I've played so far in Sim, I notice a lot of bricks, so I might switch out some of these blockers for other things. But this does seem pretty close to where you want to be, as long as you don't get unlucky and draw all of your bricks all in one go. Odin is pretty strong, but it is still an uphill battle pushing through both Ace and through Emu with him. But it does do a lot, and you really do get to exert some pressure on it. And then I have Flame Split here as a way to rest down a blocker, especially if you can hold it up on a turn to rest on their turn. That's a really great place to be. And sometimes that'll be enough to get you there. Nojiko is obviously quite strong. One of the things that I've found playing against Ace is every time they play out their Marco, you just bounce it and just keep chaining the bounces. And that'll get you a long ways towards victory. So make sure you're playing around that Nojiko. And then our final list for day 0 OP13 is Sanji. And this one, the only new card here is Culverin. I did go up on the number of red rocks, specifically because Ace, you really have to burn through all of their top end. So finding a red rock, getting rid of a 10 beard, and then trying to do that as many turns in a row while getting in damage with your Sanjis. is probably as good as it's going to get. Unfortunately, all of these lists are quite difficult to do into the top meta. So I'm probably going to have to play them less frequently than I have in the past, just so that I can not get trounced every week. But hopefully the new addition to the canon that we'll talk about next week will be able to help assuage that and give me something that can be a little more competitive to play. But thanks to everyone for hanging out with me and going over this new set, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.